Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Plead Your Case. The Final Four is set in both the men's and women's brackets. The men's teams will be playing in Houston, Texas, Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, Miami, and UConn. The Huskies being the only team to have won a national championship. Just 4 hours north, the women's Final Four will be taking place in Dallas, Texas, and featuring LSU, Virginia Tech, Iowa, and the still undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks. Heading over to the ice, the NHL playoffs are rapidly approaching, and everybody in this local area wants to know, will the Pittsburgh Penguins sneak into the postseason this season? It's going to be a great episode, so sit back, relax, it's time to plead your case. Hello and welcome to Plead Your Case. I'm Darrion Allensworth, joined alongside me, Logan, Arblaster, and Tyler Zeman. Tyler Zeman, we're going to start with you for this one first. We're going to talk about men's basketball. The Elite Eight just came and went. Any surprises from any of those games for you?
Well, for me, I think there were a lot of surprises, in particular the FAU Owls, an unreal run that they've been on as the 9 seed. They obviously had some help with Purdue going out in the first round, but they had to go through a very tough Tennessee team, and then they had to go through a very tough Kansas State team who America almost sort of fell in love with on their run to the Elite Eight. And that was no easy task. They put up a fight. Kansas State stuck around, but the Owls, they showed that they are well deserving of the Final Four spot that they're in. And the other one for me, the Miami upset over Texas. Texas, I thought, was one of the teams to beat after all the 1 seeds were out, after all the other 2 seeds were knocked out. It looked like Texas had a prime run to the championship game, and Miami just put a halt to that, and it was a very impressive comeback performance from them.
Yeah, all these teams have been really fun to watch so far, guys, and I think FAU's kind of been the team that nobody expected to get this far, and they had a comeback victory against Kansas State, even though they had 22 turnovers in that game. So it's hard to win games like that. They're going to have to clean that up moving forward. But another team that I want to talk about is UConn, who just beat Gonzaga by almost 30 points in the last game, and they've just been blowing out teams by about that margin in almost every single game. So it's been impressive to see from them, and I think they're the team to take down moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, UConn, the team that has won by the most points in the games in the Elite Eight. Tyler, do you think they are also the team to beat out of the 4 that have made it to the Final Four?
I think they are. Currently, they're the only team to have won a national title out of the 4 remaining teams, including themselves. So I think they're the favorites. Obviously, nobody on the staff has been a part of those teams, or player-wise has been a part of those teams that have gone on and won. So this is all new foreign territory for the players, but I think that history has to help them out. Obviously, they're the highest seed as well at the 4 spot, so I think they have to be the favorites considering the other chaos that has gone out in the other brackets.
Nice. Well, you're both wrong. I don't think that that UConn is going to. I think if anything that this March Madness has told us is that the 1 seed aren't the higher seeds aren't really, they're not guaranteed to win. And I know that for me, I think it's going to be Miami. I think that when their offense is going and they're clicking on all cylinders, they are the strongest offense, especially left in the Final Four. They were hot going into the tournament too as well. So I think my favorite is Miami to come out of that Final Four. Them obviously playing against UConn and then FAU and then San Diego State, the other side of the Final Four. But yeah, no, Miami, if they're hot, and they weren't even, like that wasn't, that win over their win over Creighton, they weren't even at their fullest potential. Like we talked about it, Tyler, they weren't hitting the 3 ball, and that team has been known to really hit the 3 ball, especially in the tournament. So if they're playing at their fullest and the 3 ball is going, I just don't see any team in the Final Four that can stop them. So they are my favorite.
Yeah, well, I think for me, whoever wins that Miami-UConn matchup in the Final Four is going to be the team that goes on and wins it. I mean, FAU, they've been on a magical run, a Cinderella run, as we like to call it. San Diego State, also in uncharted territory for the program. First time they've made it this far in its history after being bounced in the first round the past couple of years. So I think whoever wins that matchup is primed to win the title. But for me, the biggest thing about Miami that concerns me is how they looked versus Texas. Yeah, they came back. Yeah, they won the game. But when you shoot 2 for 8 from 3, that's only 25%. And Dessous was out for Texas, so Miami, they really attacked the paint, which was a great game plan on their part because they just went at Texas, and Texas really couldn't handle the pressure inside. But for me, UConn, they bring more size. They have Adama Sanogo, who's at 6'9". I feel like they are more physical. And so far, these last two teams in Texas and Houston, I feel like they like to go smaller, which is something that Miami also loves to do, which has played in their favor. But I think they're coming into a UConn game or a UConn team that is more well-rounded in the starting 5.
Yeah, and there's never been a Final Four without a number 1 seed, 2 seed, or 3 seed. So that's the first time that's ever going to happen. So I think it kind of brings a lot of uncertainty with that. But also, going back to what you were saying about Miami, they're going to be a tough team to beat. I know I said Gonzaga's my team, but Miami, they had Jordan Miller go 20 for 20 in their comeback win against the Texas Longhorns the other day. So if he keeps shooting the ball like that, he went 7 for 7 from the field, 13 of 13 from the line. If he shoots the ball like that, it's going to be tough to defeat Miami.
I mean, yeah, Jordan Miller with 27 points. And it just, yeah, this Miami team is going to look dangerous, is looking dangerous, and we'll see who comes out of that series. With FAU and San Diego State, we really didn't talk much about them. Obviously, all three of us, agree that whoever comes out of the Miami, Florida, and UConn series are the favorite to win it all. Who do you guys have, though, coming out of out of the Florida Atlantic and San Diego State?
I think the biggest thing that I'm looking at here is San Diego State. Yes, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. The problem for me is they don't put up a lot of points. Yeah, a lot of the games they've been in have been very low scoring. And you look at a Creighton team that they just ran into in the last round, a team that is very good offensively. They only held them to 56 points, but FAU has just been a different monster in terms of scoring. They've just looked great offensively. They're very physical as well, which I think is something they can kind of push back on San Diego State. For me, I like the run of FAU to continue. I just don't see San Diego State, while they may hold FAU to a lower amount of points, I just don't see them putting up enough points to outweigh FAU.
San Diego State's a very defensive-minded team, and I don't know if that's going to be able to carry them much further because the Florida Atlantic Owls, they're at 35-3 up to this point, the best record in the entire Final Four, and also they're on an 11-game winning streak. So you pair that together, I think they're going to be tough to take down.
Yeah, for this one, I will agree with you guys. I do think that Florida Atlantic is definitely the favorite between them and San Diego State. I mean, it's shown, especially with just the offense. The higher offenses are really just the teams that are winning. It shows too. Like San Diego State again, beating Creighton 57-56. Yeah, their defense was really good, but like you said, Tyler, it's hard whenever you're not able to also match the offensive capability of a team like that. Out of those two teams, obviously we picked Florida Atlantic is going to be the toughest. Is there like a specific matchup between the Final Four that you think would favor a team more in the national championship game?
Well, I think like UConn and Miami, I think either team is going to be battle-tested for the national championship game. I think that is just going to be, for me, the toughest matchup. For either of those teams, whatever happens in that game, the winner is going to have something that, they learned about themselves, even this late in the season, something that, they can kind of hang their heads up proud. They knocked off a very strong Miami team, or vice versa. Miami just knocked off a very good UConn team. So I think both of those will help kind of push themselves deep in the championship game and beat an FAU and San Diego State team, which, yeah, they've had to go through competition, but I feel like when you look at each of these runs on paper, I think the Midwest and the West, how the teams that UConn and Miami has had to go through has just been tougher than the teams that FAU and San Diego State have had to go through.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tyler, on most of the accounts. I think another interesting thing to point out is that Florida has two teams in the same Final Four for the first time ever, and it's only the second time ever that two teams from the same state could potentially be in the championship game. So if FAU beats Miami or if FAU meets Miami in the championship game, then that would be an interesting matchup because Miami has won 23 of the 24 appearances that they have played against Miami. So that would be a cool matchup to see as well.
Yeah, the battle for Florida, that would definitely be an interesting matchup. You guys, obviously, Miami favorites. I'm definitely taking UConn. I think UConn will beat Miami and then will win the national championship. Obviously, I think we also all agree that whoever comes out of that series between them and Miami is going to be the favorite. Do we agree that San Diego State is the underdog out of those 4 teams? Tyler, we'll begin with you on this one.
I mean, I don't necessarily know who I would consider an underdog in this matchup, like between FAU and San Diego State, because the things they've done have just been unprecedented to get there. I mean, FAU obviously the 9 seed, San Diego State the 5 seed. So I think I would have to say FAU is more of the underdog when you look at it in terms of seeding.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, at this point, what's happened, it's honestly a coin flip. I mean, you could literally just flip a coin and, you have a better chance at maybe picking that game correctly than you do just, sitting up here just chalking it down.
I definitely agree. That's all we're going to be talking about for Men's March Madness. After the break, Seth Adams will update you on what the bracket competition here in the Department of Communications has turned out to be.
You're watching WCTV, where we aim to bring you the best local coverage of what you care about most. Everything from local businesses to hometown sports and the latest weather. We're keeping up to date with what you need to know about issues that affect our campus and our community. We're telling the stories that matter, celebrating our past, our future, and our potential. So tune in for all the latest buzz right here on WCTV Channel 14, Waynesburg.
Welcome back into Plead Your Case. I'm Seth Adams with your bracket update. Everybody's bracket has been completely shattered at this point, so it's time to see what the current standings are. Haley Ryan is still in that top spot, but that honorary member of the Department of Communications, Mike Saliba, is tied for first place. There's only one person that can knock off those two, Lanny Terry's grandson. Spencer for Terry. He is the only one who has a chance to dethrone Haley and Mike. Taking a closer look into Spencer's bracket, he needs the UConn Huskies to beat the Miami Hurricanes, and he will be crowned as the winner of the bracket challenge. We got very disrespectful last week about people's terrible picks, but today we were going to make peace on Plead Your Case and disrespect those top seeds that broke all of our brackets. Alabama lost to San Diego State, and SDSU played a great game, no discredit, but how did Brandon Miller, one of, if not the best college basketball player right now, shoot 15.8% from the field and 10% from the three-point range? Kansas State was slowly transforming into America's favorite team in the tournament and then got knocked out by Florida Atlantic Owls, a team a lot of people didn't even have getting past the Memphis Tigers in the first round. Miami Hurricane destroyed everyone's bracket, ruining the script of Houston winning it all in Jim Nance's final March Madness bracket. When the Hurricanes went on to beat the Texas Longhorns to ruin Tyler Zeman and Jack Hillgrove's bracket, the last bracket destroyed was none other than one of our professors here at Waynesburg, Melinda Roeder, picking her favorite Gonzaga Bulldogs to win it all. Drew Timm had a great run in the tournament this year, but when Melinda needed him most, he vanished. That's going to do it for this week's mini segment. Come back next week to see who officially the king or queen of the bracket challenge will be.
The LSU Tigers are dancing into the Final Four for the first time since 2008. Virginia Tech is in the Final Four for the first time in school history. Iowa is in the Final Four for the first time since 1992, and the South Carolina Gamecocks are looking to go back-to-back and finish an undefeated season. Starting with the first game, the first game that we're going to talk about, LSU versus Miami. LSU getting that win. Logan, we'll start with you. What about that game that was exciting to you?
Yeah, 54-42 performance from LSU. Obviously a great defensive performance too. They had Alex Morris leading the team with 21 points, and also Angel Reese, as she scored just 13 points and shot 20% from the field, but was still able to get the job done with 18 rebounds in the game. So great rebounding, and also good on both sides of the floor. So if they can continue that, that would be big for them.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. Miami didn't really show up offensively. LSU got it done. They cleaned up the glass, as you mentioned, but LSU kind of just, while the win may not have been as convincing, maybe they didn't put up the most amount of points that you would like to see LSU put up in regards to their offensive performance. They got the job done, and it's on to the next round for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. Kudos to LSU for getting that win. Me personally, I thought Miami was going to win that. They were looking hot going into it, but I think it was a good mix of LSU defense as well as Miami just not getting into a flow offensively. That kind of hurt Miami and caused LSU to win that game. Next game we're going to talk about is South Carolina, Maryland. South Carolina, again, looking to go back-to-back. Zeman, we'll start with you with this one. What about this Gamecock squad that's just really strong?
Yeah, South Carolina has just been unreal this season, undefeated all the way up to this point. And they're obviously led by Aaliyah Boston, who has been unreal. She, lit things up in March Madness last year, comes back, is doing it again. And Dawn Staley, the head coach at South Carolina, she's worked wonders on the program. And the way that she has her team playing right now, honestly, I don't know if South Carolina will ever not be irrelevant whenever Staley's at the head coaching position. It was just, unfortunately for Maryland, they ran into the wrong team in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, and they've outscored their opponents by 30 points per game. They're just putting up insane numbers. They're first in so many categories in the nation in scoring, as you would expect. They're number one in scoring defense, 50.4 points per game. So just all that going for them right now. I don't see how they can be stopped in this tournament.
Yeah, offensively, the South Carolina squad is cooking. Not only, obviously, Aaliyah Boston with her 22 points, her double-double as well, getting 10 boards, but also Zia Cook, 18 points, 8 boards. They just have multiple scorers on this team that you can't just focus on one player. But moving on to the next matchup, Virginia Tech beating Ohio State. Zeman take that L, 84-74. We'll start with you with this one, Zeman. What about this game?
Yeah, Virginia Tech looked good. Ohio State, gave them problems. They won by double digits, so they did what they had to do. But the biggest takeaway for me from this Virginia Tech game and Ohio State game is the fact that Virginia Tech only played 6 players off the bench. Now, they did have a well-balanced scoring attack with 4 players hitting the double-digit points mark in that game. But that's just concerning for me because in this tournament, I feel like a lot of the better teams, while you cut your rotation down, you still need, 2 or 3 players coming off of the bench to provide that spark. Mm-hmm. And that may be something that LSU looks to attack Virginia Tech in their Final Four matchup.
Yeah, they're the number 1 seed for a reason, so they're playing great basketball, and I agree with everything you said. So,
see, my thing with this Virginia Tech squad and why I think they should be a favorite for some people is Elizabeth Kitley, the center, 6'6", 25 points, 12 boards in that matchup against Ohio State. I just don't see how teams are going to be able to guard her in the paint. She's unstoppable. She has a bit of a mid-range game as well. So she, to me, looks absolutely unstoppable. But talking about absolutely unstoppable, going to the next game, Iowa versus Louisville. Caitlin Clark with a 41-point triple-double. Iowa winning that game 97-83. Logan, what was your reaction when Caitlin Clark just absolutely went off?
She's been the storyline of the tournament. She's been like the LeBron James of the women's basketball tournament at this point, and she can't be stopped. She put on the show for the fans in Seattle by finishing with the first 40-point triple-double in NCAA tournament history. So with that, I don't know how she can be stopped, and it's going to be big for Iowa going forward, especially playing the team that they have up next.
Yeah, when you have Caitlin Clark looking like she did in that Elite Eight matchup, almost half the points they put up in that game were put to her name. That's just unreal. And also this Iowa team from the Big Ten, they have the the veteran leadership, also the supporting cast for Clark. So when you have her rolling, and then you have everybody who almost kind of knows their role in on the court, the team is just in one fluid motion. They looked so good in that elite matchup, but this is the matchup we've been waiting for in South Carolina and Iowa.
Yeah, I think we're gonna save that one for last. Whenever we're talking about the Final Four, South Carolina and Iowa on one side, LSU and Virginia Tech on the other. Tyler, we'll start with you. LSU, Virginia Tech, who do you have in this Final Four matchup?
For me, I like Virginia Tech. LSU, they came into the season with high expectations. They picked up early. They were just winning at the start of the season, and they just kept that into the tournament. For me, the biggest concern is they have 8 new players to this team. So either between transfers, in the rotation, I should say, either between transfers or incoming freshmen, they have a lot of new faces. So the team has gelled across the season, but when it gets in these, high pressure situations when a national title is on the line or a spot to compete for the national title is on the line, it kind of sets me off a little bit. They're under a second-year head coach, but I just don't know how together this team really is. And you look at Virginia Tech. I mean, they came from a very well ACC conference. They finished 3rd in that conference in the regular season, and then they proceeded to go on in the tournament to go on and win it. So obviously deserving 1 seed. They looked very well against Ohio State. I kind of like what they got going for them. So I just think LSU, just not the team you want to face in the Final Four in Virginia Tech.
Yeah, and LSU, like you said, they're playing great, but Virginia Tech will carry its 31-4 record into this matchup. So they're going to be a tough team to beat as well, but I'm also going to take LSU.
Yeah, I think LSU is the underdog, in my opinion, going into it. Obviously, Virginia Tech, the 1 seed. It's going back to the point that I made, though, in the Elite Eight. Who's going to guard Elizabeth Kitley? Who is stopping her? Are you going to double her? But if you double her, I mean, 3 other players also were in double digits in that game as well. So if you double her, that's going to leave their other offensive options open. And I think this Virginia Tech squad is just a very well-balanced team on both sides of the ball, as well as overall offensively. So I'm going to take Virginia Tech with that win, heading to the national championship game.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have my reservations about Virginia Tech, especially with the rotation that they play, only playing 6 players. Like, if LSU can get them in the foul trouble early, force them to put out different lineups, I think you can throw Virginia Tech off their game, and LSU could make it more interesting than I think it'll actually be. But when you look at the Virginia Tech team, that consistent scoring between the starting 5, they have that one player coming off the bench who provides a little bit of a spark and provides a little bit of a rotation as well. I just think Virginia Tech is going to be too much to handle for LSU.
That's a fair assessment. Moving on to, I think it's going to be the most exciting match of the tournament: Iowa versus South Carolina. 2 offensive juggernauts, 2 extremely strong teams. Logan, we'll start with you. Who are you taking in that matchup?
Well, I think the normal prediction would be to pick South Carolina, but my bold prediction is that Iowa's going to take this game and shock South Carolina. I know South Carolina's 14.5-point favorites in this game, but I don't care. I'm still taking Iowa in this game. I can't root against a black and gold team, I'm a Pittsburgh guy. I have to go with Iowa. So I'm taking Iowa, and it's their first Final Four in over 30 years. So they have a lot of energy to play with and a lot to play for.
Yeah, one of the emerging programs in Iowa in the NCAA women's side of things for basketball. But the juggernaut that is South Carolina, I think is just going to be too much. This is, when you look at it on paper, stats-wise, South Carolina is the best defensive team in the nation. Iowa, yes, they're one of the best offensive, teams in the nation. So it's going to be which one I think comes out on top. But when you look at it, Aaliyah Boston, she has just been doing her thing. Zia Cook, she's been playing that nice 1-2 punch with Boston on the offensive side of things. She's been putting up great numbers. And then on the defensive side of things, you have Camila Cadorso, who has just been unreal at 6'7" in the paint, just doing her thing defensively. And she's honestly why that team is where they are playing defense right now in March. And I think, look, offense can be crucial. If they have to find a way to stop Clark. Clark cannot put up the same numbers that she did. But I think with South Carolina, with what they have and what they've shown throughout the tournament, I think they're just going to be way too much for this Iowa team.
Yeah, and I can see both of these teams. I can see it going either way. But I'm on the Caitlin Clark train. I think that she is going to will force her will upon the game and get them to the national championship game. Guys, time to make our picks. Who do we have winning the national championship? Tyler, we'll start with you.
It's basic, but I have to go with South Carolina. South Carolina, dude, for me, I don't think anybody can really match up with them. I don't know. I think the speed, the physicality that they play
Caitlin
with.
Clark can't
Look,
match up with them.
Look,
First
look,
triple-double in
Caitlin Clark-
NCAA tournament history,
Okay,
men's
yeah,
or
and
women's.
and she has a supporting cast to do it. But when you look at how, again, Dawn Staley has this team playing.
41
how,
point triple-double.
Look, you're undefeated for a reason. Obviously, you're doing something right. When you can go 36-0 across the season, I think you've shown you're the best team in the nation, and I think they're going to show that they can go on and knock off Iowa, who, yeah, they got some bark with Caitlin Clark, but I don't think they have the
bite than a bark
I don't think
there,
they
my
have the
guy.
bite though to take down South Carolina, and I don't think in the national championship game, I don't think Virginia Tech is going to have the bite either to take down South Carolina. I think whichever way you slice it, this is South Carolina's title to win.
Logan, we on that Caitlin Clark train?
You know, earlier I compared her to LeBron James, and she might have to play like that to be able to defeat the Gamecocks. But you know, I think she will, and I'm going to ride with Iowa.
Me too. I agree. Caitlin Clark train all the way. Let's go. That is all for this segment, talking about Women's March Madness. After the break, we will talk about the NHL playoff push. Don't go anywhere.
Have you ever been to the Everly Library? If not, you should, because it's great. They have books of all different genres: history, biography, fiction. Try The Evolution of Life, Life of Pi, or Jurassic Park. So what if books aren't your thing? Try movies like Frozen, or TV shows like Lost. Books and DVDs aren't the only thing though. Take a trip to the second floor. Welcome to the Writing Center. These tutors will tell you everything you need to know about writing a paper, and they'll help revise your essays. Now let's head back down. Behold, the Knox Learning Center. Need to print something out 5 minutes before your next class because you procrastinated? No problem. You can also print off pictures of dogs. Because, well, you can. So grab your homework, laptop, and textbook, and study diligently. Bring your lunch too. Actually, you can't. That's illegal. Now you know the Everly Library. Stop by anytime. Seriously, it's open all week.
The Eastern Conference has 5 teams clinched for the playoffs, with the Bruins clinching the Atlantic Division. But there has been no playoff positions clinched over in the Western Conference yet. So, in the West, the obviously weaker conference compared to the East, I personally have the Vegas Golden Knights. I think they are by far, I mean, even though the points don't show it, the strongest team in the West. Tyler, we'll begin with you because I think you're about to say something stupid per usual. Who is your tough team in the West?
So the team I'm going to have be the team to beat out of the West is the Colorado Avalanche.
Oh, get me
now
out,
look. They haven't had the most convincing regular season.
Yeah,
There's still,
obviously.
what, like 10 games left to go? Just about
I don't know.
for
You
them.
tell me.
There's
You're
just
the
about 10 games
Colorado
left to go.
Avalanche expert, apparently.
There's just about 10 games left to go.
Uh-huh.
And they are 9-1 in their last 10. They are on fire right now.
Oh, yeah.
Cal McCarr. All right.
Cal.
Nathan McKinnon. All right. Nico Rantanen. They can take over a series if they want to. All right. These
Anybody
guys
else on
are
that
unreal.
roster?
They did it last year. All right. They have the defense. They have the goaltending as well.
Uh-huh.
And look, they haven't been great, but they've had to battle through injuries in the regular season, which I think is partially due to the reason why they're not at the top of their division. But they're still the defending Stanley Cup champs. I mean, these are the guys whoever the next Stanley Cup champ is going to be, they got to probably knock them off in some shape or form.
I also have the Avalanche. If they get
Oh,
hot,
my
they're
goodness.
the defending champs. How can you go against that? I mean, with the roster they have, if they get hot at the right time, what are you going to do?
Because the West is
It's the same roster as last
It
year.
doesn't even matter because whether they make it out of the West or not, whoever is coming out of the East, I think, is going to stomp them. Either way, I can understand your points that sure,
But in the
they're
West,
bringing back the
we're
the
talking
same
about the
team.
West. We're
Yeah,
not talking about the
obviously we're
East.
talking about the West.
All right.
Obviously, whoever they have the superstars, they have the star power. Could they? Sure, but it's the Vegas Golden Knights. They've been good every year since they hit the playoffs.
expansion team that
Jack
nobody cares about
Eichel.
because
no, Seattle Kraken are this expansion team nobody cares about. It's Vegas, baby. It's Las Vegas. It's the Golden Knights. Jack Eichel, I think he's going to absolute carry in the playoffs. He's a great. I think he was the franchise player that they were missing that they finally brought in last season. He had a fully healthy. He's had a pretty much fully healthy offseason leading up to a healthy season this year. I think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to. They're gonna roll through the playoffs in the West. I don't think it's gonna. I think maybe they might have like 1 6-game series in the West because the West is weak. But otherwise, I have them just rolling through the West to make it to the Stanley Cup final. X Factor teams. I know you love your X Factor teams, Tyler. Who's your X Factor team in the West?
My dark horse in the West, it's got to be, look, they're at the top of their division, but for me, it's got to be the Minnesota Wild. They have the best goaltending right now in the West. I feel it with Fleury and Gustafsson.
Yeah.
All right, they've both been playing as number one goalies throughout the regular season. I feel like nobody has really talked about the Minnesota Wild. I think it's been all Vegas Golden Knights. I think it's all the Los Angeles Kings are back this year. It's been, the Edmonton Oilers. It's been, your Colorado Avalanche. But Minnesota Wild, they've been getting it done. They've been looking really good. And on top of that, they've conceded the least amount of goals in the West with 199 allowed. For me, the goaltending will travel in the playoffs, which I think is a big reason why they may be able to sneak not only 1, but 2 or 3 games on the road in a series if it requires them to.
Against who?
Well, I think they can do it, against the Golden Knights. I think they could do it against the Avalanche. Look, they may not have – they're young.
They're young.
All right, they have the veteran
veteran leadership on that team.
They have a few guys, though, that have experienced the NHL playoffs. And I think when you put all that together, when you have solid goaltending behind –
Names.
Let me finish. When you have solid goaltending behind a young offense, a young defense, that's got to spark confidence in them. They've proved that they're good enough to compete with those tough guys in the regular season. I mean, because they're at the top of their division, and they're only 3rd in the Western Conference.
Yeah, again, it's the Western Conference.
That's got to go for
something. The weakest division in all
Yeah, but it's still the
hockey.
highest level of hockey in the world. I mean, these guys aren't just scrubs in the West. I mean, these guys are professional athletes out there getting it done. And again, Minnesota has proved themselves. They've proved that they can run with the top guys, and they look good. Again, for me, it goes back to the goaltending. Yeah, they're young. Yeah, they may not have the big leadership that you want them to. They might not have that big X factor, that you want a team to have. But you catch them at the wrong time. I think they are a team that other top-tier teams in the West don't want to have to face in the playoffs.
Okay.
First of all, I don't know why we're even talking about hockey with MLB opening day in 2 days.
Okay,
but anyways,
you can leave. I mean, that's honestly, the door's right there, my friend.
I mean, I'd love to, but I got to talk about hockey in my picks here. So I'm going to go with the Pens in the East. We'll get into that more later.
Into the East. Sure. No, we might as well go right into the East.
Okay, yeah, and then the Boston Bruins were going to be my team to beat in the East.
Okay.
But, but no, going back to my West dark horse team, I have the Seattle Kraken to finish.
That makes a lot of sense for you. That just
they picked up 5 of their last 6 points in a huge 3-game road trip. So they're really hot right now, and that's who I got.
Hey, they're a dark horse, and look, I don't disagree with him. They're a dark horse because at the start of the season, nobody thought the Kraken were going to be here. All right. The fact that they're in a wild card spot, the fact that they haven't looked bad.
They are.
Look, for me, I don't know if they're going to win a series. They're probably not going to beat one of the top tier teams that they're going to match up with in the first round. But I mean, the fact that they've kind of gone under the radar, just like the Wild, you have to consider them as a dark horse.
Can we stop talking about the West? The West is so boring.
Sure.
All right, moving on to the East, the strongest conference by far. Boston Bruins, 119 points. Next closest team is Carolina with 103 points. I know we talked about it just briefly there, Logan. I think Boston is the team to beat, period. They've been absolutely dominant from forwards to goaltending to defensemen. They've been dominant. I think no matter the team they faced in the first round, they are going to annihilate them. So, Tyler, we'll start with you. Who are your favorites in the East?
Well, for me, I'll just make it a clean sweep, so get out the brooms. The Boston Bruins, this is honestly their cup to lose. I think that everybody else is inferior to them, and they have showed that they are the best team in not just the East, but the NHL as a whole. I mean, they are so good at home, and if you have to if you make, well, Boston pretty much is in the right position to, but they're going to make the Eastern Conference go through Boston. They are 33-3 at home.
Only 3 regulation losses.
That is just unreal to me. They're not bad on the road either. They've picked up 27 wins as well on different ices.
And the fastest team to 50 wins
yeah.
ever.
And again, I talked about it with the Minnesota Wild. This team is the best defensive team in the NHL, only 157 goals allowed, and they're the second highest goal-scoring team across the league with 275. So you put those together, they're on average scoring just under 4 goals, and defensively, they're just giving up just over 2 goals a game, which is unreal numbers for a team like Boston.
Okay, so we all agree that Boston, their cup to lose. I agree with that statement, Tyler. What teams in the East, though, that you think can threaten them? We're not starting with you. Logan, we'll start with you. What are the teams in the East that can threaten them?
You know I have to go with the Penguins. Huge Pittsburgh guy. But here's the thing. They've been one of the most dominant franchises in the last decade. I know things look a little bit differently now for the supporting cast.
I think Tampa would like to beg to differ.
No, they've been up there too, for
out.
sure. Absolutely. But here's the thing. We still have Malkin, Letang, Crosby. We got the big 3. We get hot at the right time, we might be able to make some things happen. And we've made the playoffs 16 years in a row. Darrion, 16 years in a row for a reason. Mm-hmm. We get to 17, you never know. Once you make it in, all bets are off.
That's why hockey, in my opinion, is the greatest sport in the world when it comes to just matchups. Anything can happen. But no, the Pens aren't doing anything. I love the Penguins. I'm a hometown Pittsburgh guy. I'm sorry, I can't see them doing anything. They've been way too inconsistent with me. Tyler?
No, I think just piggybacking off the comments about the Pens. Look, I'm not taking them as a dark horse, or I'm not saying that they can compete with Boston, but the East is a bloodbath. Anybody can beat anybody on any given night.
Okay.
Again, we talked about it before. I think Boston's up here, and everybody else is just down here, especially in the East. But for me, I think the only team that can compete, and thus are my dark horse in the East, is the New York Rangers.
They're not a dark horse. Everybody knows.
They loaded up.
Everybody knows.
They may not be great defensively.
We literally had a discussion about this. On paper, the New York Rangers look like the best team in the NHL. On paper. That doesn't make them a dark horse team. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that this team is super strong with the amount of talent they have on that roster.
Okay, but I don't really... When we're talking about, there's only one team that actually can compete with Boston in a 7-game series.
I wouldn't say
For
there's
me,
only one
not
team.
only does that, all right, then who else would you include?
I think Carolina and New Jersey could easily, I think they can make it interesting.
And Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh.
No,
Yeah.
and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no, because they,
North Carolina was the hottest team, I think, other than Boston in the beginning of the year. They are also one of the other 3 teams that have lost only single-digit regulation games at home, so they are strong at home as well. I think Carolina has made the playoffs the past 3 years, I believe, so they are veteran tested. They have a good mixture of veteran and star talent. Sebastian Aho, one of the best forwards in the NHL. I think he's going to make magic happen in the playoffs. Carolina, and then New Jersey. New Jersey is honestly a pretty good example and pretty good comparison to your Minnesota pick that you have in the West, because they are also an extremely young team that has veteran leadership from the back end as well. And I think if they get on a hot start in the East, I think that they could also run all the way through. I think Boston, out of the other 3 teams, including the Rangers, Boston is probably the worst matchup for them, but still, I could see it happening.
I just don't know. I think the only team that I think can take Boston 7 games is the Rangers. I think
I agree,
that's
but
the
they're
only
not
team
a
that can
dark
legitimately
horse.
run.
They're not a dark horse pick. They're not.
But then that just makes everybody else under the Rangers and Boston just even more inferior to the fact that.
I see both sides of this, but the thing is, I'm going to go back to it. The Pens, they have the most third-period blown leads this year, which you can see in a bad way, but you can also see in a good way.
What's the good
They're
part
still a
in
playoff
that?
team, and they have the most blown leads.
That's because
in the
everyone
NHL.
else in the East is just Florida's the next closest team. They're 3 points behind them.
If the Penguins can
the Penguins
transition
might
what
not
they've
even
done in
make
the
the
first and
playoffs.
second period
They might not
into
even
the
make the
third
playoffs.
period, they can make some noise in the playoffs.
If they make it. I hope they do.
They're going to make it.
Love the Pens. I hope they do. But first of all, there's that slight chance they won't make it. And if that happens, I wouldn't be surprised. I honestly wouldn't be. the Pens, like they're.
You
I
wouldn't
love
be
the Pens.
surprised
Their
because
core,
they made it 16 years in a row prior to that.
Well, yeah, obviously that plays a part into that. But like,
Yeah.
it's either way, whoever
No, the
they
Bruins
face in
are the
first
top
round,
dog. I'm just saying.
Yes. Maybe if they make the second wild card spot, the Islanders fall down, they would face Carolina. I could see them beating Carolina. I could see that. Will Wilson, I know you and I, we talked about that. Shout out to him, our tech guy. I think I could see Pittsburgh beating Carolina. Maybe they could start a miraculous one from there. But meeting Boston, I think it just is the death sentence for any team in the first round. Unless, they just have a monumental one-seed collapse like Tampa Bay did a few years ago as well. But, okay, so do we all agree, though, Boston, the favorites to come out the East,
Yep.
make it to the Stanley Cup final? Who do we have winning it all? Tyler, we'll start with you.
Boston. But if you want to take Boston out of the equation, then I would either have to go between the Avalanche or the Rangers. Because, look, if one of the Eastern Conference teams messes around and they find out that, maybe Boston isn't as good as we thought.
Mess around and find out, right?
Yeah, and they end up taking Boston 7 games, 6 games, whatever. They win their first team to 4. Doesn't matter how many games it takes. Mm-hmm. I think if somebody can knock off Boston, I think the door is wide open for the Rangers who, again, on paper, they're the best team. They look like the best team. But, realistically, Boston has been sitting up there setting unprecedented numbers. So, the Rangers, they loaded up. They put themselves in a position where, maybe they are the ones that have to get their hands dirty and knock off Boston themselves. But if they do, then I like either the Rangers or the Avalanche to win it.
Yeah, I have Boston too. I agree with most of Z-Man's points. We've agreed for most of the segment. I think you can agree with. But yeah, I'm going to go with Boston in the East.
Fair. I agree. I think Boston, if they make it all the way, I think they are the favorites. If Colorado were to make it in the West, I could see them winning it as well. Again, I do think championship experience matters, but I don't think they're going to make it out of the West anyways. But I like your point for if Boston gets knocked out, who would you have? I think the Rangers are a good pick for that as well. I think another team that could make it as well is the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they finally make it out of the first round and beat Boston, I 100% think that they have the talent on paper and they will just win it all, because the Boston has been the bane of their existence as well as just for the first round in general. So I think they could do it as well, but I think the clear consensus, Boston's the strongest team. It's Boston's cup to lose. Mm-hmm. That is all for this episode of Plead Your Case. Make sure you come back every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. on both the YouTube channel and cable channel. Have a great night.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.